Hello everyone and welcome to another video. We have talked a lot about the longest possible ride in RollerCoaster Tycoon recently, and we haven't reached the ceiling on that yet as the record keeps being broken. But what about the shortest possible ride? The setups for that might not be as complicated as the ones for the longest ride, but the journey to get us from a regular short ride to the absolute shortest possible is still very interesting. When you think of a short ride, then you might think of the classic RollerCoaster Tycoon 1 design, the shuttle loop. It does a loop, goes up a spike and then does the same in reverse. That gives a ride time of just 12 seconds, which is really quite short, but only just the beginning. For example, a very basic tiny wild mouse circle already is significantly shorter with a ride time of just 9 seconds. Although that 9 seconds isn't very accurate. Firstly, it only gives us the ride time rounded down to the nearest second, but the game also calculates the ride time wrong and it ends up being 25% too high. The real ride time of this ride is gonna be about 7 seconds, not 9. I measured it by recording footage of the ride and then in my editing software measuring the exact amount of frames between the last one before it starts moving and the first one after it has stopped moving. Ride times are slightly inconsistent due to variations in guest weight, and because after a ride a train may be in a very slightly different starting position than the previous time. You can't see that different position, but it could lead to a few frames difference in ride time. To mitigate this a bit, I always ran all trains at full capacity and took the average of 3 runs. For this wild mouse, those runs were 7.05, 0.03 and 0.02 for an average of 7.03 seconds as the final definitive ride duration. That's a decent start, but the train travels so very slowly. One way to go faster is to use boosters or launched operating mode, and we'll get to that, but not yet as we haven't reached the full potential of a non-launched continuous circuit mode yet. What if instead of going flat we go down and then up again? That is a longer distance, but also with a higher speed, so it could be shorter. And if you do it right, it indeed is. This vertical drop coaster design makes use of the tiny level to steep track pieces to make the ride as short as possible. It does need a chainlift piece at the end, but even with that bit of slow travel it has a ride time of just 5.78 seconds, already more than a second less than the wild mouse. And as a bonus, it even has pretty good stats, because it passes all its stats requirements, whereas the wild mouse didn't. Due to the height of the station, you do need a long, expensive queue line, so it's probably not the most practical design, except of course when you place it on the side of a cliff like I've done here in Whispering Cliffs. In order to get really short ride times, we will have to use some method of powered launch though. The first thing that we'll try is boosters, which can help the train accelerate very quickly without the need of a lengthy drop. The Giga Coaster and Twister Coaster have the strongest boosters in the game, and they also provide the quickest ride times. I timed the Giga Coaster at 3.33 seconds and the Twister at an ever so slightly faster 3.27 seconds. That is 2.5 seconds faster than the vertical drop coaster, but there's something odd about the Twister Coaster that allows it to be even shorter. Here we have 2 Twister trains right next to each other that have each just finished their ride. If I double close and reopen one of them, then that train respawns a bit further forward. It only ever starts in this more forward place when it has just been spawned, as after that it will stop further back. That allows for a shorter first ride time, reducing it from 3.27 seconds to just 3.15. I did also try another strategy where I put the first booster behind the station instead of in front of it. The logic here is that now the train is immediately right on the booster and doesn't have to spend a few tenths of a second traveling towards it. Unfortunately, this doesn't work and it still takes a bit for the train to engage, leading to a longer ride time in the end. We can also put the power in the vehicles instead of in the track. This is a jet ski boat hire. Jet skis go quite fast, and it being a boat hire means that it can do a much shorter lap as it has access to tiny turns. And thanks to the 2 extra jet skis still waiting in the station, it doesn't even need to travel all the way to the front of it again, making the ride even shorter. This one goes down to 3.06 seconds, another tenth of a second faster. There is another powered ride with tiny turns though, and that is the go-karts. In continuous circuit mode with just a single cart that starts on the inside, this tiny lap should be really short, but is it shorter than the jet skis? It is shorter indeed, but not by very much. It's only about 0.08 seconds faster, but that is a new milestone, 2.98 seconds, the first sub 3 second ride time. There are some guest cheats to make guests drive go-karts faster, and the fastest of these is Damon Hill. Unfortunately, it makes no difference as the ride is too short with too many turns for him to be able to use his extra top speed. This go-kart is also the shortest possible thrill ride in the game, with an asterisk. But who says that the lap has to be completed? In this setup, the trains leave the station and then immediately roll back into it, making for an extremely short ride. Nearly every roller coaster can do this, but the vertical drop coaster and inverted hairpin are the best for this. They both have the tiny level to steep track piece and can do very short single car trains, allowing for the quickest rollback possible. I timed them at an average of 2.68 and 2.67 seconds respectively, so I think we can declare them as being equally long, or equally short I guess. Now that we're talking about not completing the lap, we should return to the boat hire, because it has one extra final trick up its sleeve. If a boat hire is in free roaming mode, then it cannot go onto any tile that has scenery, path or a ride directly on the water. That is useful for giving them a limited area to boat about in and prevent them from getting lost, but we can also exploit it. What would happen if we blocked the tile immediately in front of the station? Well, then they can't get out and turn around. If we then leave the tile behind the station accessible, they will go there and then immediately go back in, finishing the ride in just 2.09 seconds, making this the shortest possible water ride. Roller coasters can go much shorter though, and we can do that by not bothering to return to the same station that we departed from. A design like this uses two stations to create an extremely short one-tile ride. The Twister coaster has access to the fastest chainlift in the game at 12 km an hour, and it also starts further forward on respawn, making this ride just 1.95 seconds long, the first under 2 seconds. With a booster instead of the chainlift, this is even faster, especially if we also put one behind the station to get the benefit of two boosters at the same time. The ride time now goes down all the way to just 1.14 seconds. Before we continue pushing the time of roller coasters further and further down, I want to have a look at some other categories, such as the shortest transport ride. I have 3 candidates in mind: the trams, the chairlift and the monorail with small trains. Of these, the chairlift is the longest with 1.95 seconds. You may think we could make it shorter by using stations of just 1 tile long instead of 2 tiles, but the game won't let you open your chairlift if you try that, so that doesn't work. In second place is the trams, which does the same spawning further forward thing as the Twister coaster train, and even more significantly so. Without that trick it's over 2 seconds long, but with it it only takes 1.72 seconds. And finally there is the fastest transport ride of all, the tiny monorail. With a faster acceleration than the trams, it completes the legendary single tile ride in just 1.36 seconds. And what about gentle rides? These are either flat rides, which are way too long, or they are slow tracked rides like the car ride, which are way too slow. Except for one, the maze. The classic tiny one-tile death maze is incredibly short, but not the shortest. The guests enter in the middle of the tile, but they cannot walk there. They first have to go to one of the sides of the tile, then cross over to the other side and then move back to the middle of the tile to exit. Because that takes a while to do, both of these designs, which don't have to do that, are faster. On both the sideways and the corner maze, they can walk on extremely short paths between the entrance and exit. That doesn't mean that they always do that though, and some of these guests are downright idiots, walking back and forth and even jumping to see if they can see more that way. Mate, go to the damn optician and get some glasses, although I'm not sure they make them strong enough for someone as blind as you are. Anyway, after waiting long enough, I got a few that took the shortest possible route. I also made sure that all these guests have the maximum walking speed possible by giving them all the maximum energy value possible. Measuring the ride time is a bit different here, and I decided to start on the final frame that part of the guest sprite is still obscured by the entrance building and end on the first frame where they're partially obscured by the exit building. With this timing method, the sideways maze has an average completion time of 1.38 seconds and the corner maze of 1.13 seconds, which is 0.01 seconds faster than a boosted one-tile Twister coaster, and thus it's a new record. Or it's at least a tie if you take the error bars into account. Alright, that's enough fooling around. It's now time for the big guns, launched roller coasters. Boosters are great and all, but being launched out of the station will always be faster. The classic micro corkscrew coaster is a great example of a short launched roller coaster with just 3.37 seconds. Much longer than we've already seen, but still a very short ride while also having good stats and being absolutely tiny. For this video we don't care about stats though, so let's build a flat LIM launched coaster circle with the fastest possible launch speed of 111 km an hour. Ah, that is better, and this incredibly short and back-destroying ride only takes 1.25 seconds. I also tried the gangster cars from the expansions to see if they would possibly be any faster, but they just go into arriving at station mode if you launch them at maximum speed from a single tile station, so they are just completely bugged and won't help us. Anyway, the 1.25 seconds of the limb coaster with its powered launch is still not shorter than the maze and the boosted one-tile twister, but this is where the air-powered vertical coaster helps us out. It does not have access to small turns and therefore has longer to travel, but its higher maximum launch speed of 180 km per hour and also stronger launch in order to actually reach that speed more than makes up for the longer distance. This differently shaped circle managed to push the ride duration down to just 1.07 seconds, nearing the barrier of a sub 1 second ride. Can we go under that? Can we make a ride shorter than 1 second? We could if we could combine a launched coaster with a one-tile ride, but unfortunately you can't, as you cannot have more than one station on a launched ride. Except you can do exactly that, but only on one very specific ride type. It's one we've used before. The LIM launched coaster is back for revenge with a unique powered launch block-sectioned operating mode, which allows you to use multiple trains and multiple stations. Those extra trains are not useful to us, but the stations definitely are. By launching this train at full speed over the full length of the mighty single tile ride, we get a truly minuscule ride time of just 0.36 seconds. After having gone twice, the ride does completely lock up because the tail of the train is stretching into the previous block section, which needs to be free for the ride to go, but since it does go twice and guests can ride it in that time, I do count it. Those 0.36 seconds make for an astonishingly short ride, and this is the shortest possible ride in the game, with an asterisk. Alright, let's talk about those asterisks, shall we? The question is, when does a ride end? Usually you would use the definition that I have used throughout this video, where the ride is done once the vehicle stops moving for the last time or when the guest leaves the attraction area. What about when people die? If you die on a ride, then surely the ride has ended for you, right? Assuming that that is the case, we can still go shorter. First, we'll use the launched freefall. I said that the go-kart of 2.98 seconds was the shortest possible thrill ride, but a launched freefall with 2 tower pieces launched at 38 km an hour will crash after just 1.47 seconds of ride time. Here I count the moment that the ride window pops up to let us know the ride has crashed as the end of the ride. At this point all the guests have disappeared and thus have stopped experiencing the ride. If you count crashes as being a valid end of the ride, then this is the shortest possible thrill ride. The same method can be applied to roller coasters, and these can crash much quicker as we can just have a station and nothing else. They don't crash against a vertical terrain surface, they just go through it, so a slope in front of the station is the best we can do. The LIM coaster launched at its maximum 111 km an hour goes from standing still to being the source of 28 homicides in just 0.22 seconds on average. That is significantly faster than the one-tile LIM coaster, which took 0.36 seconds to complete. But again, the air-powered vertical coaster has it beat with its much more powerful launch and thus faster acceleration. It does lose in terms of kill count with only 16 guests, but their perishing speed is unmatched with a mere 0.14 seconds. That is a monstrously quick ride. And yet, inside this explanation of an asterisk, we yet again find another asterisk. On normal rollercoaster rides that do not crash, a ride happens between the boarding and unboarding of the guests, right? The guests board, then we measure the time in between where the train starts and stops moving, and then the guests get off. But what if the train doesn't move at all? Take a look at this setup. The guests board the train, then they get torpedoed by the previous train, and then the guests leave the ride without ever having gone anywhere. That is, if you creatively interpret the definition of ride duration, a ride time of 0.00 seconds, which really is the shortest possible ride in the game. And the guests do count as having ridden it, it is in their ride logs, which is good enough for me. If you want to go the other way and learn all about the history of the longest ride ever built in RollerCoaster Tycoon, then you can click here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.